We'd like to sincerely thank our Patreon supporters. What's going on, guys? Kagan and I are in the truck, and we're dealing with an emergency situation. It's a couple minutes to 8. We've got a couple minutes before we have to go in. So this all started late yesterday evening. I was driving home from my parents' house. I went to dinner with my parents. I had to go drop an animal off at shipping. And Kagan called me and said that 2 animals got in a fight. And of course, immediately I thought of like, well, who do we have paired? I was only like 2 minutes from the house, pulled in the driveway, and I ran back to the cages, well, as best as I can run right now. And Pinky and Bumblebee got into it, and of course immediately I'm like, wait a second, they're not paired. Pinky's about to lay eggs. Either Pinky or Bumblebee got through the screen between their enclosures, and I mean, they got in a fight. If she's close to laying, Pinky is usually very aggressive, very territorial over her enclosure. And the sunning shelves where they are right next to each other, and that's where the break was. So I almost think that he was probably up there sunning himself, and she probably sat there and pulled and pulled and pulled at the screen and found a weak spot. And then once one spot's compromised, the next spot's more vulnerable, and she picked her way through to him. And the screen situation we're going to deal with, and I'll explain further when we get to the house, because I think I've mentioned it in past videos. That is part of our regular routine, is walking around the perimeter of the enclosures. Seems like the whole vet's office is pulling in right now. Yeah. Dr. Mike was nice enough to squeeze us in before their full day of everything gets started. Pinky's in bad shape. She's very alert, but her neck is wide open. She has muscle hanging out of her neck. It's very graphic. Kagan slept the whole way here, probably because she didn't sleep well last night at all. We luckily had just finished building those cages in the driveway, so we put her into a semi-sterile enclosure with no substrate, clean water, and what's the product you use? Chlorhexidine. Kagan washed all of Pinky and flushed out the wound with chlorhexidine. It was not bleeding when it happened, or when we found them, so it's not like she was losing blood or anything like that. Sent pictures to Dr. Mike, and he was able to squeeze us in first thing this morning. So I'm not going to bring the camera in. I'm not going to slow the process down. We're going to carry the box. She's in the back seat right there. And when we get back to the house, I'll show you guys what happened. We are back at the house now, and in the driveway, showing you guys, these were the 2 cages we just finished, and this was the cage that we were able to move Pinky into right away last night. So Kagan right away got chlorhexidine and washed this tub out with that, and then she sprayed the enclosure and hosed the enclosure off. Now, didn't want to like force water pressure on Pinky so much, so she sprayed Pinky down with chlorhexidine and then shot it into the wound really good with a little pump sprayer to clean it out, the bacteria, as much as possible. And this was probably the most sterile place we could put her for last night. And then we rolled this enclosure into the garage so ants and mosquitoes wouldn't tax her during the night. Now, this morning we were supposed to take the boat to the west coast of Florida today, because I tracked down the old owner of the company that made these boats. And yeah, we were supposed to go fishing and then meet up with him after lunchtime for him to go over the structural issues with the boat and how to properly repair them. So which, you know, was a pretty important day. I'm still able to do that. If Pinky is ready for pickup earlier, Kagan or my mom will go pick Pinky up, and I'm going to try and keep the appointment with this gentleman after lunchtime. So I've rehooked up to the boat. Kagan's inside getting ready for the day. Let's walk out to the enclosures and see what we have out there. I'll show you guys exactly what happened. That was better than walking with me. I'm such a slow walker right now, guys. All right, so we're out by the enclosures, and I'm gonna show you kind of like from the outside of the enclosures. I have been regularly going and checking the mesh. Like, this is all in good shape, right? But you could see, well, it's all in good shape here, but then you could see, can you guys see that little bit of rust bubbling? We've been having to combat that by repainting it, coating it. But you know, if the metal isn't significant gauge and it gets compromised by rust, and it doesn't take much for that rust to take away the strength of that wire. The roof on all these enclosures is only 19 gauge galvanized 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch, and a lot of that material is material, well, yeah, a lot of it is material from the other house. So a lot of this material is stuff that's been outside for 5 years plus, and there's no section that shows any rust whatsoever. It's all in perfect shape. Now, it's only 19 gauge, but it's all in perfect shape, 19 gauge. Once an animal gets all the way up here, it only has so much strength to mess with that 19 gauge galvanized. So I do the whole perimeter of all the enclosures because that's where an animal can get to freedom, to outside. And so I regularly check on the condition of that wire. And if stuff needs to be recoated, I coat it. But the stuff that separates two enclosures, I usually have been just doing, well, I've been doing a visual inspection, just glancing over at it. It all looks good. This all looks good, you know, barring, now if we get real close, can you guys see? There is some surface rust, but it's not super blistered. It really hasn't lost shape. Here's the area that the animals worked on. Pinky was in her enclosure on the other side, and Bumblebee would have been on this shelf. And if he was hanging out up here and she was hanging out sunning herself, she is days away from laying eggs. She gets very, very defensive before laying eggs. I would almost guarantee, because I've seen her with other females, with other males, she is the aggressor. Lily would do the same thing before. Open mouth, hit the screen. She wants to get to that other animal to chase them away. And because they were on their shelf and were able to put power into it, the painting of the mesh, I mean, look at this. This is an area that they pulled at. It's a candy shell. The paint and the vinyl coating is just a candy shell. The wire is degraded to a point that, I mean, that's strong enough that my fingers can't break. They found weak points and they worked at it and worked at it. Once they break one, now they've got a bigger spot to put their snout into and work it. Honestly, I've always hated the coated mesh, and I almost felt like I got pressured into it, because you guys know that, like, I try to listen to stuff that everybody says. Even if it contradicts what I say, I always take everything into consideration, because I'm not one of those guys that pretends to be a know-it-all. I have lots of experience keeping monitor lizards, but I'm not one of those people that will say it's my way or the highway, or I'm always right. I'm always willing to learn, because there is a lot to learn. I gotta make sure I don't stand in ants again. There's a lot to learn from everyone else, and keeping your ears open to other ideas. When I started the YouTube channel at the other house, I had half of my enclosures already done with galvanized mesh, and I started hearing the comments that it needs to be vinyl coated, and I kind of said, you know, I don't want to say I'm like sensitive to negative comments, but I always try to do the right thing. So when I started getting negative comments about galvanized mesh, I absorbed the cost and tore off the galvanized mesh, said I'll use it somewhere else. I think I used it on the chicken coop or something, and ordered vinyl coated. And at this property, I went 100% with the vinyl coated. Now I could tell you, and I mentioned it in past videos, that I noticed the difference in quality of what was vinyl coated pre-COVID to the stuff that I received after. Like, I've made jokes about it. Like, how did 16 gauge change? I mean, 16 gauge should be 16 gauge. But what was 16 gauge was all of a sudden a thinner product. And I think that's about the same time that I noticed maybe they were, you know, the stuff I ordered through Amazon was rusting right away, and I was having to repaint it. Although, you know, I said that out loud, and then I've been reminded by people that I've already talked to since this incident that I was recoating the stuff before that also. That even the stuff that felt thicker, well, I don't think there's any recourse for those companies saying that it's galvanized vinyl coated or PVC coated mesh, because by the time you find out you're so far from the point of purchase and it's cut up into tiny pieces installed on your cage project, like, how do you go back and get your money? You know, how do you get your money for this? I prefer, if I had an animal that was terrified of me, I would rather more plywood and more cover and more security for that animal, so they're not running and rubbing their face on mesh. And you guys know that where I've had animals panic and rub their face on mesh, I have tried to, I just back off. I remove me from the situation so that animal calms down and stops that. All that stuff's manageable. This is not manageable. Can you guys think about how many 100-foot rolls of mesh? I lost count of how many 100-foot rolls of mesh that I've ordered for this project, and it all needs to be replaced. I think that in the future, the only thing that I'm concerned with being painted or having a coat on it is going to be the hallway side, what we film from. This point of view, I think I need to order a couple 100-foot rolls and start replacing it from the outside. I'm gonna do some visual inspections and see the areas that, I mean, stuff that I didn't question. Like, you know, like I said, I showed you guys me pushing on this, but then we look up and then there's this. How strong is that? I could tell you that we already, since we've, you know, Lily is no longer in her enclosure, but when that happened, we realized, you know, the outside wall of her enclosure, no problem. But to the tortoise area, her enclosure degraded rapidly. Look at the rust on this galvanized coated mesh. So we already decided an animal's not going, look at this, not going in this enclosure until it's fixed. That's all it takes. You see? An animal's not going in that enclosure until that's replaced. We had already said that to ourselves. That's why it remains empty right now. That needs to be replaced. There's a lot of stuff that needs to be replaced. I reduced the price of, so Bumblebee is in Pinky's enclosure right now. when Pinky comes home from the vets, she's not going back into her enclosure. She'll probably gonna have to take, you know, have daily cleanings and shots, antibiotics and stuff like that. She'll probably go into that driveway enclosure so we can more easily do that and keep her clean. I don't know, did I say that already? That she's about to lay eggs? So that was the last thing we said to Dr. Mike, and he's gonna look at that. I don't know if he's gonna have to remove all the eggs from her, or if he wants her to just evacuate them on her own. But the scary thing is with that much damage to her throat, there's going to be a period of healing where she may not be able to eat. And if she can't eat, how is she going to rebound from already being so taxed from producing all those eggs? That's the scariest thought, is that if it was a male, he'd probably get right past that. But she's days away from laying eggs, and she's already physically taxed. If anything, she needs, you know, high fat, high calorie, you know, high calcium foods. She needs rodents, things like that. Maybe she can swallow mice or something smaller. I don't know. So I thought I was working on winter stuff, but that's what I'm gonna aggressively work on, is replacing screen on the outside, and then start looking at the partitions between certain animals and replacing as needed. If we replace anything hallways wise, to me that's less concern, because if an animal got loose, he's just in the caged hallway. But now you're thinking about animals getting to animals, then it raises the concern again. I mean, that's exactly what happens. You know, there's a lot of animals we let walk the hallway, and what do the females do? They get to the other females' enclosures, and then they start getting aggressive with that female at the door. Mouth open, scratching at the screen. It seems to be kind of a normal thing for all the big females to do that. Just kind of overwhelmed right now. And just sickened, because it's my fault it happened. I should have been inspecting more. I'm gonna look at like Sally's enclosure, all the big females, all the big animals. Their stuff needs to be right. I think right now, I'm gonna cut up some heavy duty screen, and any areas that I don't like, I'm probably going to immediately zip tie other mesh over those areas that I think are weak, and just stitch stuff in, because I mean, I can't replace everything in a day. It's going to take some time. So that's where we're at. I'll keep you guys updated. You know what? See, I lose my train of thought. I discussed before about the industry standards and stuff that people say, and it forces you into a box. I'm not gonna let that happen anymore. I'm gonna do what I think and know is right. Because in certain instances, I do know better. Like, I know what's best for my animals. So maybe if we disagree on something, but in my experience, this is the better way. This is what happens when, partially, the product, I shouldn't have been using that product. I should have started with something that I knew 100% was galvanized, and then if I needed to paint the hallway side, it's just sickening. The whole thing is sickening. I'm gonna end this one here and get to work on some of this stuff. I only have a short morning here before I have to go, and then Kagan's gonna take over. She's checking on females that are supposed to lay, so she's out here. I reduced the price on Bumblebee so we can hurry up and move him. I think he's down to $800 on MorphMarket, so if someone's looking for a het black dragon, he is normally super calm with the ladies. Again, I think Pinky was the aggressor in this situation, and he just defended himself, and he's a bigger animal. But I think we have Drago sold, verbally sold. So if Drago leaves, we'll be removing this divider and changing out the substrate and giving Sammy a larger enclosure. And then Sammy would have Raven, Raven above the door, who did finally lay her first good clutch of eggs unfertilized. So we're gonna try and get a little more weight on Raven, and then we'll be able to produce black dragons again.
She's for sale too.
Oh, and Sonia. Oh, Sonia's out.
And she's going through a shed.
Yeah, and Sonia is got her weight back on. Her hips look good. Let's see if I can open this up without her getting excited. But so a proven female sulfur that's successfully laid a good clutch of eggs, has her weight back on her. She's also up for sale. Moving a couple animals out of the collection will allow us to have some cages to move around, and then also here in the sulfur department we'll be able to give Conan a large 10 by 12, and that way him and his female BB will have a good setup side by side, and that will allow us to do the larger water features and all that stuff. But I mean, right now it'll allow us to move animals around to repair cages is what it'll do. That's all for this one, guys. We will have an update video ASAP. We thank you, we appreciate you. As always, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, comment, and ring that notification bell. We'll see you soon.